James Carville knew how to win, and he blamed the Democratic losses this November 2nd on stupid wokeness, to which AOC fired back that wokeness is a term almost exclusively used by older people these days. So that should tell you all you need to know. What? This is a term folks like you brought out very recently and had been proudly displaying at every march since. Just last year, The Guardian declared woke the word of our era. I guess they didn't get the memo from the Mean Girls Club. We don't use that emoji anymore. Woke, please, we say fetch now. What a great strategy, never missing an opportunity to remind voters how lame and clueless and hopelessly uncool they are, especially since those are the ones who actually vote. But okay, fine. What word would you like us to use for the plainly insane excesses of the left that are not liberalism, but something completely different? Because you can't have that word liberal from us and think it should cover things like canceling Lincoln and teaching third graders they're oppressors. That's all your new thing.
Again, that is not their new thing. That's stuff that Breitbart and Ben Shapiro have farmed from some third grade teacher in one town and has tried to make you think that's the whole left. And Bill Maher's like, yeah, no, that is. Because he's not that left. And first of all, they're not claiming that they're liberals. Like seriously, he is stuck in this 90s mentality and believes that whatever positions we had there were perfectly fine. And whatever ignorances I have culturally in terms of religion, in terms of race, I never need to get better. Ignorance is fine. Whatever way you've evolved on, however, first of all, he thinks he's more in tune with what diverse communities around this country believe. He's been for decades a wealthy guy who lives in LA and doesn't talk to anyone who doesn't write for the New York Times or host a show on Fox News. And she's not saying any of the things that he's saying. He honestly can't even keep up with a congresswoman, let alone regular Americans.
I was there in a room with Bill Maher as he was telling, just talking to his hair person. I fulfilled things on Bill Maher's rider to fly to Sundance, where he had specifics about his private jet and what kind it needed to be, how much weed needed to be on board his jet, which I thought was cool at the time. This dude won't fly with other people to Sundance to do his special show in 2004. I know that he knows he's the elite. He's the guy who brags about I dropped $1 million. I dropped $1 million for Obama. He knows who he is and what he is. And the whole point about James Carville knowing how to win. Here's how James Carville won. Literally by saying, it's the economy, stupid. That's it. And saying, I'm not and at the time, George H.W. Bush was like, I want to make this about character. And then Bill Clinton did that. And then also, we can't deny it, H. Ross Perot showed up and siphoned a ton of conservative votes away from Bush. So don't give me that I know how to win thing. And that the winners on the left have benefited from a lot of externalities. And then also the last thing I'll say is there are a lot of unforeseen things showing up. And definitely when Biden won, I think it was a mix of what you said, but also COVID. People were mad and frustrated with the economic downturn in COVID. And that's why there's this rhetorical device I use when I'm being nice. And I hate that I have to do it, but there's a way to say it, which is, I'm glad, I think you're wrong, but I'm glad that's what you're wrong about. It's the nicest way I can say it. I'm glad what he's wrong about is that he wants people to message and stop being elitist. Because that's common ground, because that's your perception of me and my perception of you. Let's work together and get through it and find a way to message to real human Americans that actually benefits their life.
I would say even the COVID thing gets a little bit difficult because they turned that into a massive culture war thing on the right.
Well, that's all they could do, but it didn't work at the time, and they didn't give up. Well, they knew they couldn't win on economic issues. They're trying to make this, as we'll talk about later, this about inflation.
Yeah, and
they would if they could. They always used to.
They push tax cuts,
Well, no, I'm just saying by and large, in the 90s, if we're talking about a 90s political mentality, the 90s political takeaways that they enshrined into political thinkers at the time was, you got to play to your strengths. And the perceived strengths of Republicans at the time, all the way through to very recently, is Republicans were better by and large on economic issues, and Democrats were better at cultural issues. And now those tables, if Democrats know what's good for them, will turn and have turned.
I think that people have had multiple cycles now of what it is economically that Republicans do when they get into power. And I think it's a little bit harder for them to try to make that case. And I think that they've stopped trying to make it. What I would say is my lesson integrating Bill Maher and AOC is that the right is always going to pluck up nonsensical culture war things and try to make politics about that. They've been doing it forever. They talk about cancel culture now. Back in Bill Maher's day, when he was only 50 in the 90s, it was political correctness. It was the exact same thing. They will always think that the left is too radical on matters of race and sexuality and those sorts of things. That is not a variable, that is a constant. The question is, will the Democrats just be weaker, less appealing to emotion versions of Republicans, which nobody's gonna vote for, or are they going to deliver something? Delivering does not guarantee that they stay in power, but it seems like the only option they have. And as Brett pointed out, when he was popular, it's when he was promising things and seemingly delivering on at least a little bit of it. That's my takeaway. And again, AOC and the squad are the ones that are trying to make Biden deliver. They're trying to make that happen. Notice how little criticism Bill Maher had. He had one quick aside to Joe Manchin. But Joe Manchin, Kyrsten Sinema seemingly are not a big issue from Bill Maher's point of view. The fact that they are directly stopping Biden from delivering on his promises wasn't worth much of a mention in that 8-minute monologue.
Check out the Damage Report podcast each day, wherever you get your podcasts, whether Pocket Casts or Stitcher or iTunes. You can join me as I give you the news and stories you want, with a range of co-hosts and interview guests jumping in on the fun each day. Again, that's the Damage Report, wherever you get your podcasts. And if you get them at iTunes, don't forget to rate and review. Sometimes I'll read them live on the show.